Most of us had been to Mexico before because they're in CONCACAF and we play games there. So we knew that there would be a hysteria. And the fact that it's now a World Cup would compound that to no end. We arrived at the airport and as expected, there were throngs of media there. And then we got on the bus and we went to our home base. And our home base was in the middle of nowhere.
We had maybe a TV channel, 3 or 4 TV channels that we could look at, and of course the World Cup was being played there. But that was kind of really the only ability for us to see what was going on with the other games. So I think in some ways too it was good. Like we really could just focus on what we needed to do, which was get up, eat, train that day at the pitch they had made for us, and then focus on preparing for that first game against France.
Standing in the tunnel before we played against the French, who were one of the favorites to actually win the World Cup at the '86 World Cup. And the tunnel, it's probably that wide. So you can reach across and touch the players. And I was tempted to do so, but I maintained my composure. I looked at the front of the line was Platini, Tigana, Giresse, all names that I'm familiar with and all of my teammates are familiar with as well. And a little bit of starstruck. You're looking at these guys and they're literally a couple of feet away from you, and you're going out to play them, and you're playing them in a meaningful game. You're playing them in a World Cup match. And then there was pretty much silence, and then the silence was broken by Platini looking over at Bruce Wilson, who was our captain. It was the front of the line. He says, you Toronto Blizzard, Bruce's team. And I remember thinking, wow, Bruce, he knows who you are. Like, that's impressive. But what had happened was he had played, his club team was Juventus, and they had played in Toronto, and they played against Toronto, and Bruce was the captain of Toronto as well. So I said to him, that's a story I'd be telling for the rest of my life, that Platini recognized you.
We knew we were in for a very, very competitive and tough game. But I think at the same time, too, we knew it was 11 v 11 and that we were a very well-organized team and a disciplined team, and we had a great culture and a brotherhood as well that brought us together and would work for each other, and we knew we'd give them a tough game. We weren't expected to win. The fans outside the stadium were putting up the number of fingers they thought that they would beat us by 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
As the game wore on, they were creating chances, but we had a brilliant young 19-year-old goalkeeper in Paul Dolan who was making all the saves that he needed to make.
There was a period of time during that game, I remember defending a corner kick, still a 0-0 at that time, and I said to my teammates, let's not drop this here, let's keep it going. I'm enjoying this too much. And so I feel good that I did get that experience of in the moment realizing what a big opportunity this was and how much you should enjoy that.
Before the goal, I was actually getting a sense of it was fairly even up. Like it wasn't like we were back on our heels and being pressured, and they were creating piles of goal-scoring chances. And we were creating a few of our own.
You look at the play in particular and you see what could I have done differently. And you don't want to use the excuse of the altitude in Mexico, but I feel like it did play a factor in the fact that the ball that came in from across on the far side continued its flight rather than, at normal altitude dropping closer to my hand, which was outstretched and trying to push it over the end line. And then as I try to reach up and just get a touch to it, I felt that I had a good read on it and swung and just got the slightest of touches. And to my horror, there was a French player in behind who headed it back across the goal for Jean-Pierre Papin to tap it in. So obviously it's disappointing that you end up losing the game on a play that maybe you might have made in a different situation. But again, I look at it in the whole context of how well our team played and how well we played in the whole World Cup, not just that one game, but the other 2 games as well. We didn't score a goal, but we were proud of the way that we represented Canada.
In spite of the fact that I think most people were surprised, including the French, because they were interviewed after the game, and I know their coach was impressed with our tenacity and our willingness to work as hard as we did. But instead of it being a draw, which would have been a huge result, it ended up being a loss, and unfortunate that in general it was a fairly good performance.